Hey, Coke Scholar family and friends. Welcome to The Sip, the podcast that shares a taste of the Coke Scholars around the world igniting positive change. This season, we're serving up a series of intriguing how-to topics, from how to travel like a pro to how to manage your finances. Get ready! Our vibrant community's unique insights and expert advice are sure to inspire and enhance your everyday life. My name is Jason Shanker, and I'm excited to lead you through this season. I'm a 1991 Coke Scholar, originally from California, and now living in Arlington, Virginia with my wife and 2 daughters. I run a small business doing technology consulting. For those who are listening, whether you're a Coke Scholar or not, welcome! We're glad you're here. For a little background, the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation is the largest achievement-based and corporate-sponsored scholarship program in the country. Each year, it awards $20,000 to each of 150 high school seniors across the country who share a unique passion for service and leadership. There are now over 6,900 Coke Scholars creating positive change around the world. If you want to learn more, you can visit coca-cola-scholarsfoundation.org. This episode, 3 Coke Scholar entrepreneurs share how to start a business. Coke Scholars J.J. Jackson, Erica Tuggle, and Nathan Sharp dive into essential tips for launching a successful business, including where and how to start, necessary safeguards, and securing investments. Let's meet our panelists and discover the innovative ventures they've created. 1994 scholar J.J. Jackson, the moderator of this conversation, is a dad of 3, including 2 with nut allergies. To help combat the food allergy epidemic, he co-founded Mission Mighty Me with his wife Catherine and Dr. Gideon Lack. Their products help parents follow pediatric guidelines to introduce nuts early and consistently, which could prevent up to 90% of peanut allergies. Erica Tuggle is a 2001 scholar and founder of Cook Connect, a service that connects busy families with personal chefs for convenient, nutritious meals. Launched in 2022, Cook Connect has been recognized as a top 25 startup to watch by the Atlanta Business Chronicle, been featured in Essence magazine, and raised over $1 million in venture capital. 2004 scholar Nathan Sharp is the co-founder and CEO of Retro, an ad-free social app that makes it a joy to share photos with friends again. Before creating Retro, Nathan was a product director at Meta, where he launched Instagram Stories, Facebook Dating, and new features for Facebook groups. And now, here's JJ, Erica, and Nathan.
Hi, everyone. My name is JJ Jackson, and I'm a 1994 Coke Scholar. And we're here today to talk about a topic that our panel here is super passionate about, and that is how to start a business. And I just think we've got the perfect group here to talk about this, and I'm just so thrilled to be joined here by Nathan Sharp and Erica Tuggle. Why don't we just, we'll dive in right away, but maybe just to orient everybody, if you guys could each just give a little background on what you're doing. Maybe we'll start with Nathan.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Nathan Sharp. I'm a 2004 Coca-Cola scholar. Grew up in Kentucky, now live in San Francisco with my wife and 3 little girls, 3, 5, and 7. I'm working on a new social app called Retro. It's a former team from Instagram. We're all from Instagram working on basically the social network that we wanted for our own family and friends. So it's really fun and consumer social. Also love new businesses across the whole spectrum of consumer.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. And Erica, how about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Erica Tuggle. I'm a 2001 scholar and started a business called Cook Connect. And essentially what we do is we are trying to create a more accessible model for personal chefs. And so the idea is to help people eat better and also save their time by not being in the kitchen, but by working with a local chef who can help them have healthier and better meals throughout the week. So we're a subscription-based service and we're about connecting people with those chefs in their local community.
Thanks so much, guys. I'll just give super quick background on what I'm up to. I was in the corporate world for a long time in investment banking and private equity investing, and then just completely left that and started a company called Mission Mighty Me with my wife as our co-founder and Dr. Gideon Lack, who discovered that peanut allergy can be prevented if kids just get peanut and other nuts into their diet super early. So we make these little quick dissolve puffs that little kids just love to chow down on because they're delicious. and they're all more than 50% nuts. So the kids get the nuts just from eating them and loving the snack. And then we, along with everybody's help prevent a whole bunch of peanut allergies from developing in the United States. One of the things that I thought was really interesting with like this group, like the three of us, is that I think will be super relevant for this audience is that I noticed that we all three started in kind of the big corporate environment. You know, Erica, you were at General Mills, you were at Coke, and Nathan at Meta, and we then kind of took the plunge into entrepreneurship versus some people I feel like that were kind of born entrepreneurs and they kind of did that from the beginning. And I think probably a lot of the listeners here might have had a similar kind of career path where they jumped into the corporate world, you know, whatever it may be, and are then now thinking, okay, you know, what's that idea for me? Is there something I could do? So hopefully our perspective on it coming from like big companies and then starting things on our own will be super relevant for everybody listening. But I thought we'd just jump into some questions. And then I'd love for, you know, both of you guys to kind of give some thoughts. I might give some thoughts here and there, and we'll just kind of move through a few questions that we think are going to be helpful for everybody. But this is like a big question, but you know, when you think about the top three things that are most important to creating a successful and lasting business that really kind of cuts across all types of businesses, let's just jump in and start there. Erica, you want to kick us off with the top three things that you think are the most important to creating a successful business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you're right. There are a lot of things that just cut across any and every business. The first thing for me is, which is something actually that I'm currently really focused on, is the team. I remember when I first started talking to people about, you know, starting my own company and even thinking about investors and that sort of thing, I always look at the team. And that's just as important for the founder, having people that you're excited to work with that are smart, even smarter than you is what I prefer, and who can really help you, you know, bring the vision to life. I think that's absolutely probably the most important thing. The other thing I would say is capital management. That's the other thing I heard a lot about in starting my own company was, you know, the people who fail are the ones that run out of money. So figure out how to manage your capital effectively. That's about making the right investments, but also about, you know, managing things like burn and some of the other kind of tactical but really important things that you have to do. And then the third thing I would say that's really important, honestly, and this is maybe a little bit more loftier, if you will, but I think clarity of vision. It really, it drives the team, the partnerships. It drives if you are seeking investment or, you know, or financial partners in that way. And it really gives you, it's so, one of the things that's so interesting, it gives you a path forward. And one of the things that's so interesting about being in entrepreneurship, at least for me, is that versus the corporate world, it's way less defined. And there are various things that happen that surprise me every day, which makes it really fun and interesting, especially intellectually interesting. But it also means that having a North Star and a vision for what you're doing is really important. And so I think those are probably three of, if not the most really important things that you need in starting a successful business.
Gosh, I love that, Erica. And they're all so true. I feel like we could probably even have like, what are the top 50 things that are most important? But you're right, like narrowing them in, some really good thoughts there and some tangible ones too, like capital management is like something that may not get talked about enough. But it's so real watching the burn. So Nathan, how about you? What comes to mind for you as like top three things to make a business successful?
Yeah. I think I'd have to agree with Erica on all those. So I can really just add to those. I think as I was thinking about this question, I think the three things that came to mind is like, first of all, kind of not just an idea, but a space that's infinitely interesting to you. And the reason I say that is that startups are so hard that you go, it's just a roller coaster. The truth of it is, in the beginning, you're more in the depths of the roller coaster and like the slow part or the boring part or the hard part than you are in like the elevation and like all the high moments. And so the reason that an idea or a space, if you're not totally sure if this is like the idea, is infinitely interesting to you is that even in the depths of things, you can wake up with like all the energy and enthusiasm to like make the most of it for that day. So I would say like an idea that's infinitely exciting to you. I think the second one is that there are like outliers out there where there's just like a single founder or a very small team or like a one or a few person team, but usually just having like a co-founder who you trust in terms of competence, in terms of like their integrity, in terms of just like the way that they handle themselves is so important. Like going into business with a co-founder is like almost like a form of marriage, and you're really in it through thick and thin, both just like practically, but also legally in so many ways. So just making sure that you have a great co-founder or great co-founders, I think is the second thing that came to mind. And then the third is that starting a company is really difficult, and you usually don't want to have to be dependent on outside resources like right from the get-go. So it's important that there's no way that two or three co-founders could ever be completely self-sufficient for the life of the business. But if you think about your first like 1, 2, 3 critical milestones for the business, whether it's like putting the team together, building the product, bringing the product to market, you need to have all the skills inherent within that team that's like motivated by equity usually, in order to build those, so that you're not always just relying on an investor to give you money to hire the engineers or the resources or the partnerships that you need, so that you can be self-sufficient.
Gosh, those are all so good, Nathan, and I agree wholeheartedly on all of those. I thought it was really interesting in particular that you often think of starting a business like, oh, we have to have a great product that everyone's going to love. And I think there's certainly truth to that. Like you have to build a great product that people will be attracted to. But your point about building something that you are really excited about is just so important, because I completely agree that you need something that, on those days when things are not going as well as you think they should, that keeps you going. And it's got to be something that you're really excited about, or maybe a mission orientation or something that really allows you to continue on. Well, I had written down a few, and you guys covered them, because it was that great product, differentiated product, incredible people, and I really can't underscore that enough. And people that are like take their own initiative and can really run with things and be excited about it. One other one that I would add that I think is often maybe underappreciated is patience. And what I mean by that is, we hear so much about like, and especially like with these listeners, right? There's no lack of motivation, and willingness for things to move really quickly, right? And that is certainly, I think, part of like a successful, startup, building a business culture. But I think you also have to recognize that these things take time. And whether it's giving yourself a little grace or just planning for the future and knowing that they take time, I think patience is actually really important. And you need to have that so that you can see it through to where you want it to go. Let's jump to like a slightly different question. That's really around people that are thinking, well, not only just like how do I start a business, nuts and bolts, but like what if I'm trying to think of even like what kind of business to start? Like I know I want to do something on my own, like where do I go? Maybe Nathan, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah. This gets to what I said in the beginning about the idea, which is that I think a lot of it just starts internally. Just ask yourself what you're really curious about and what you could go deep on day after day after day. The world is filled with so many problems that if you're really curious about a certain space and you yourself like engage in that space every day, whether you're a photographer or like you're laying down roads or whatever it is you're doing, there's almost certainly something that could improve your life, either from a time-saving standpoint, entertainment standpoint, a meaning standpoint. And so I would start there, just like by being deeply curious about yourself and the things that give you energy in the world, and go from there. I think there are different lenses that you need to start looking at things against. So not every business idea is a good for-profit business idea. And so a little bit later, after you identify those things that really give you energy, you should start asking like, would this be a good business model? Would people be able to pay me for this? And would I be able to cover my costs such that the company's profitable and can fund itself and continue operating?
I love it. Erica, what would you add there?
Yeah, I love that too, Nathan. It's actually, I think our answers are somewhat related, and in that I always tell people like you've got to find the right problem to solve, because you really do have to care about it, like to do it every day. And to Nathan's point, to go through some of the really difficult experiences and sometimes disappointments and that sort of thing, but then to wake up and do it again, it is very important to kind of not only really care about that problem, but love that problem, be curious about that problem. I also would add on to that then that there's an element of also making sure you're well positioned to solve that one, which was really important for me, because I had for a while had this bug of wanting to, go out and start something and build something from the ground up. And I just didn't have, a problem that made sense for me to solve. Like I was interested in it, but I was like, well, I don't really, what do I bring to that? To help do that effectively and in a differentiated way, like you were saying before, JJ. And so that's really important too. Finding out, thinking about, the your experiences, the skill sets you bring, and how you're well positioned to solve that problem that you really care about.
Yeah, and I love how, I mean, I totally agree with that. And y'all's answers, like your perspective on that, have like good similarity and like what are you drawn to, right? And that you will be enthusiastic about continuing on when things are really hard. But also, like you said, Erica, like what is this thing that you are uniquely suited to
Mhm.
solve, right? Like it's almost this
Exactly.
like this thought process of not just like, okay, I'm looking out in the world, what is the biggest problem out there, and should I go solve it? It's more of like, okay, what is this pain point that's out there that I am, and people I might recruit in or am uniquely positioned to do something about. So
Right.
relevance is really important. I totally agree with that. I mean, it may be that some people look, deep within their existing industry, right? Like, so they've got, a lot of expertise on something, and that could vary from, okay, you've got someone who's working as an attorney at a big law firm, and then she wants to go off and start, her own law firm or at an advertising agency or something. But it could also be something, like tangential to the industry. So something with like deep industry expertise. But I also think, like, at least for me personally, I think it's okay. Like, it's good, kind of like, Nathan, you were saying too, is like, if you have this realization, and Erica, you experienced this, sounds like like it's one thing to have a realization of like, I think I would like to start something someday, but not feel like you have to do it tomorrow. Maybe there's just a little patience around this too. For me personally, I can remember, working big company, and in 2009, I read an article in the New York Times about Tom shoes. And it was like I had this light bulb moment. I was like, wait a minute, business can be a force for good. And I remember that was like the first time I thought, I might want to start something one day. But the idea, like tons of ideas came like, what about this? What about this? But like the one that I ended up acting upon didn't present itself for like 6 years. But like if you open yourself up to like, hey, I'm aware and I'm looking and I'm like open to like, thinking of something, then if you're patient, then something, I think is much more likely to come along, and then you act on it. All right. Well, so sorry, Nathan, were you
I
gonna say?
will. I think it's probably good to add one thing too, which is like if you're wondering like how to start, I think there's a good question about why to start. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things
Right.
that I would like to tell my like younger
Totally.
self, and sometimes like younger people that ask me about entrepreneurship, is that usually people that come to me um, are kind of interested in starting a company for like one of four reasons. I think one of the first ones is you just want to be your own boss. You don't like somebody telling you what to do every day, so you want to be your own boss, or you want to make a lot of money or earn a lot of prestige, is like the second idea or the second point reason. And then third is that there's a group of people you just really like working with, and you could almost build many things with them. But it's all about your collaboration with a person or a team. And then fourth is that there's this idea that you just think has to exist and you love the day-to-day work to making it exist. Those are four things, and sometimes it's a combination of those, and sometimes it's all of those. But what I would say is if you find that you're like over-indexed on either number one or two, you've got to really step back and reevaluate, because those are very bad ideas to over-index on. Like, the primary reason you're doing a startup is to be your own boss. It's a bad idea because you quickly find that your customers are your boss, or that, like, pre-product market fit, your team is kind of your boss. Like, everybody there is working with you and can work in like any other place of their choice. And so you're like really kind of beholden to your team, because if they left, you'd be in a really sticky place where you'd have to put a team together, or you can't proceed to your next milestone. And then finally, like, when it comes to money and prestige, I think that the expected value of a startup is actually much lower than most people think, because the failure rate is so high. Learning is so high. And when your opportunity cost is low and you're young, I think you should definitely do it. I really encourage people to do that, but I just want to make sure that people are doing it for the right reasons. I think reasons 3 and 4, wanting to work with another person, or just loving an idea and wanting to bring it into existence and loving the work that's required on just a day-to-day basis. Those are both great ideas for like primary reasons for starting a company.
I love that,
Love
Nathan.
that.
Yeah,
Same.
right. Sorry, Erica. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I love that. I think that's so spot on, because yeah, you quickly realize that number one and two really aren't, realities.
Yeah.
I remember, and it's so funny, I always tell people this. And it's like I remember when I left Coke, I was like, I'm really looking to challenge myself in a different way and to build, myself as a business leader in a different way. And I think this is a way to do that. And I always tell people there are probably a million other things I could have done that would have been challenging and stretched me. And I probably picked the hardest thing to do. But it really is like, why are you doing this? It's a great question to answer. I think that's yeah, a nice build, Nathan.
Yeah, I would add to that too, and I know this may sound a little scary to some people, but like I almost feel like when people are asking me about this, like, what if I do this? I say, are you willing to spend 10 years creating this thing? Because if you're willing to do that and know that it still might fail, okay? If you're willing to do that, then that's something you should pursue. But if you're not willing to, if this thing doesn't like generate enough like motivation inside you, and like willingness to devote this much of your career to it, it may not be the thing, and the thing, whatever it may be, may come along later. But these things take time. If you really want to build something, and you have to stick to it. And so you have to like think about that very carefully, and to your both your points, be motivated for the right reasons. Well, so all right, so somebody listening, they've kind of thought through that. They really still have this urge to do this thing. They feel like it needs to exist. And so they've got this like vision. What do each of you think, and Eric, I'll start with you this time, is the best, like, okay, what's the best next step or two? Like all right, I've got this idea, I've got this vision, I've got this thing, like, now what?
Yeah. Talk to people. I think that's like the best thing you can do. Because there are so many ways to approach right the problem, whatever the problem is. And you need to start building your brain, and talking to the people whom you think might use it, people you think may not use it, just to get a better understanding of what is that market out there, and what are people going to be looking for, who you're building for. I love that Nathan said your customers are really your boss, and it's very true. Like, our product is driven by what our customers tell us they want. And so that is real, not only when you're actually building, but even before that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And honestly, for me, when I started talking to more people about it, it totally opened my mind up, beyond what I thought the possibilities were, beyond where the questions I had, right? It was really rich. So that's where I started. And I think it's a really great place to start, even before you put pen to paper on anything.
I love it. Nathan, what do you think?
I can tell you how we thought about it, and I think it applies to other maybe software startups. For a lot of different software startups, oftentimes people raise money, and the way that I've kind of segmented these different rounds is usually your pre-seed round is raised against the quality of the team. Your seed round is usually raised against the quality of the product. Your A round is usually raised against traction, just whether you're growing and things are healthy.
Mhm.
And then beyond that, B to C, it's like revenue and unit economics. And then later on, it's kind of profit. And so if you think about those things as milestones, I would ask yourself, what what do I need to do first to get to those different milestones? So if I need to put together just a stellar team that can get to the product, then I ask myself, do we have all the skills inherent within our current team and current founders? And if not, then we need to go ahead and raise some funding to like hire a few more people or buy compute if you're an AI startup, or buy resources or materials if you're a hardware startup of sorts. And so I would start there. I think most software startups at least start with like team and product. And so, Erica's completely right. You should be talking to people like right from the get-go. And I think that in the very beginning, those conversations are even probably like more of your time than even later on. But I think in a lot of those conversations in the back of your mind, you're asking like, do I have the right team? And based on what those conversations are telling me.
I love it. Yeah. And each of and then these building blocks kind of stack on that as you move along and that, but like getting feedback, I agree is so important. I'll tell you an embarrassing story real quick. When we had our like first had our idea, and it was this like precious thing in our minds that we would like walk around carefully holding, not sharing it with too many
Yeah.
people because we were afraid, somebody this in our mind, the idea was so obvious that surely, if someone heard about it, they were going to like take the idea and run off. And embarrassingly, even when I joined like a little entrepreneurship group, I remember asking whether everyone in the group signed non-disclosure agreements, which is like such a, big company thing to think. And they're like, what are you talking about? So share your idea with people, get feedback. And you'd be very like surprised at how much you learn from people, but then you also get to decide which feedback you agree with and which you don't. You will have friends that tell you that your idea is crazy, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea or that you should do it. The real question is, when you hear that advice, like, how does it make you feel in terms of like thinking about how you view the opportunity of the business? You can have really great friends that give really good advice, but that doesn't mean you have to take it because you may be seeing something a little differently than they are. But feedback is great. It can help illuminate some holes in your vision, but it can also kind of give you more strength and conviction around the things that you believe, even if others, may disagree. All right, well, jumping to, also some practical aspects is if you're thinking about like capital and cash, Nathan, you touched on this a little bit in terms of like seed, Series A. Erica, you did as well in terms of like, thinking about capital management, burn rate. How do you think about when you're starting a business, um, how someone should think about capital and cash? And I ask this in two parts. One is the business, but then separately is like sustaining yourself personally. Nathan, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah. I think the way you should think about capital in general, especially at like the startup stage, is to think about the startup in terms of milestones and what each one of those milestones is going to cost you, and then giving you some buffer room. And when you think about the cost of it, one thing that I would say is that if you kind of have got that thumbs up there, I always do that. But if that doesn't work as well. Um,
That's not allowed. The thumbs down.
if you, whenever you think about what it's going to cost to get these different milestones, you really, and you're kind of a key player on the team, you want to make sure that if you have the ability to raise some money, that you pay yourself to the extent that you don't have to worry about meeting your costs of living. That it's super stressful to like not pay yourself anything while you're paying other employees. and you're worried about like rent or like putting stress on your relationships or your family or something like that. So that's the way I would think about it. Like, what's it going to cost me to get to the next milestone? Whether that's like profitability or the ability to convince another investor to invest more cash into the company, but always like consider the constraint of your own health, your own concerns, and like basically just enabling you to do the best like individual contribution work for the company. So I would recommend if you raise money, pay yourself something. The amount that you pay yourself has a cap eventually. But like it can go up a little bit more if you've raised more. If you've just raised like a very small amount, you probably just pay yourself a small amount, but always enough to like cover your living costs.
I love it. Very good practical advice. Erica, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's totally right. The only thing I would add is, and someone gave me this advice early on too, is you kind of you have to put some guardrails, if you will, or even time limits in place. Um, you mentioned this, JJ. I think it was you, who's, the failure rate is very high. And the failure rate at, 1 year, 2 years, and I mean, it happens throughout the journey. And so somebody had given me really good advice to like, okay, because initially, right, we didn't have funding initially. So go as far as you're willing to go, but know where that line is, and agree to that line with, whoever is in this situation with you, your partner, whoever's impacted by your decisions financially, and know where that line is. And I think that's actually really helpful advice for one, setting the milestones you need to get to and knowing like if you do need to fundraise, like where you need to be by a certain point in time and what you're working towards, to add some more kind of structure to that. But I also think it helps you make choices, and make decisions along the way. That honestly, like for me, it was really helpful to kind of guide the things I needed to do, and having some real discipline around that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, give yourself some of those lines in the sand. And it's like by this date, we need to be here, or else I have to make some really hard choices.
I love it. Mile markers, put some boundaries in place, plan ahead. I totally agree with, with all that. Pay
And
yourself,
that's
right,
really for
Nathan?
sustaining
Like,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Make sure that, if you are raising money, right, outside money that you're paying yourself, and a successful organization has to have a healthy leader. And that includes like, financial health, to whatever extent that, that business can allow. I would just add to that, I also think it kind of depends on your life stage too. I mean, if I'm being like really honest about it, like, if you are, you know, no kids, no dependents, and you are, early in your career, and if you go try something, you can easily jump back in if you decide it's not working, like go for it, right? When you're a little more further along in your career and you've got kids, you've got, maybe you've got aging parents, maybe you've got like, others that rely on you, then like you need a 2-year plan at least, like to make sure that you can sustain, what, the way that, you want to provide for anyone that's depending on you, for some period of time. Because if you don't give yourself enough cushion, then I think you can really run into like, it's stressful enough, and it will be stressful, but it can, be even more stressful if you haven't planned out enough, when people are depending on you. The speaking of like depends on your, age and stage, and we'll start to wrap it up here. But the I would just want to encourage, everybody on here. I guess I'm actually like if I was a 94 Coke Scholar, then I'm probably the oldest one in this, certainly on this panel, but maybe of those listening, in the scholar community. And but I would say like, there's all these stories about, the young person dropping out of college and starting the company in their parents' garage. And like, if that's you and you want to go for it, like go for it. But, read not too long ago in the Harvard Business Review that the average age of a founder, for a successful startup in the United States, the way they performed the analysis and so forth, was 42 years old. And so I mentioned that for a couple of reasons. One, don't feel like you have to go do this like today. Like, dig into your industry, develop some expertise, like be able to bring something to the table that's, unique, especially if you're in an industry where you want to start your business, where you have to raise capital. You have to have deep experience to be able to reliably raise capital. And then I also mentioned that because for any of the listeners that are out there that are, further along in their career and they're like, man, I wish I'd started, that thing 20 years ago when people normally do their startup thing. Like it's a total myth. And most successful startups, like looking on average, are started by people who are deeper in their careers and have a little more experience. Okay, so with that, I'll jump to some quick fast five questions. If Nathan and Erica, if y'all are ready for it. Are you ready for it?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready, but let's go.
Okay. Well, I purposefully did not give these to you in advance because I thought it was supposed to be like whatever first comes to mind. All right, so I'll start with Nathan since he's certainly resident deep. Our resident here who's deepest on apps. What are two apps or websites that you can't live without?
Oh, good question. Good question. I mean, there's
And
the deep
retro can be an answer.
Well, you know what? I will say that, like, I'm deep into all consumer apps, and like I'm deep into
Totally.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat. And part of the reason we built Retro is that it could be a complete substitute for people that really just want to keep up with friends without the ads or distractions. So it's like ad-free social media. So I could live without Retro, like, but honestly, it's just become like a really meaningful way for me to document my life, document my kids, how they grow up, and like keep friends like aware that I still exist. I'd stop sharing almost everywhere else for different reasons, of whether it's like privacy or it's just like cringe to share to certain places now because they all just seem like performances. And so I use Retro a lot. And so download retro.app and tell me what you think. The other app though that I would say has been like taken like a surprising large place in my life is this app called Perplexity. And it's a little bit like ChatGPT, but without the hallucinations. I always mess up that word. Without the hallucinations of most AI, and it gives you sources. So like whenever I used to go to Google and ask a question, I would get 10 links, and then you go through the links and you try and judge based on the title of the link whether it's good or not. Perplexity is great because it just summarizes all of those links and gives you just a definitive answer, and you can have a back and forth conversation about it. So I found that that's awesome for everything from like what's the best restaurant in Honolulu to like what's the best marketing strategy for me if I'm like really trying to convince parents that this is a great app for them.
I love it. All right, Erica, first thing that comes to mind on if we saw a list of your most frequently played songs, what would most surprise us?
What would most surprise you? Gosh, probably that most of the, well, I don't know if it would surprise you because I have kids, but most of them are probably from kids shows or movies. Oh my gosh,
Would it be
I
like
don't think
Baby
this would
Shark?
surprise anyone, but I'm a huge Beyonce fan. So it would probably, and I also like Megan Trainor. So it would probably be something between Beyonce has this Levi's jeans song that I've played probably like a zillion times. So it would probably be that one. But I also like Feel Better. What is it? Better When I'm Dancing. Megan Trainor, which
Love
is
it.
also from like the Charlie Brown movie or something. So hit
I
both
love it. It's
sides.
so funny how like now having kids, like your song list changed very
Oh
drastically.
my
Mine would probably
gosh.
be like my son is really into baseball right now, and they have walk-up songs, and
Oh
so all the
yes.
boys like on their team, all the kids on the team like pick their song, and so I've got a whole like playlist that is not what you would expect to be my playlist. It's on my song, and we just
Exactly.
on my list, and we just play it over and over.
Yeah. It matches,
Um,
it messes up any algorithm like whatsoever.
right. You kind of want to tell the algo like, I promise this is for my 9-year-old, right? Like, yeah. All right. What about Nathan? Do you have quote or a motto that you live by?
Not so much for like my business, but with my kids, a lot of times we have the saying in the house, it's good vibes only. Um, and obviously life isn't just good vibes only, but it's just another way of saying the old thing that was like from Bambi, where the mom was like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But just when you're in the car and life is like objectively good, you don't need to look out for complaints or voice them if you're feeling a complaint coming on. So a lot of times we'll say good vibes only. And my oldest daughter for Father's Day made me like I don't know, like a tote bag out of a paper towel that says good vibes only on it. And I like it so much.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a
it's a little
win.
like Hakuna Matata, but good vibes only.
I love it. And it's always great when like the kids, like when something comes out where you're like, wait a minute, that one actually stuck. Some nugget that maybe
Yeah,
they'll hang on
yeah.
to. I love that. Well, and certainly like happiness and everything like comes from within too. So especially when you think about like how hard it is, we're talking about starting a business, like how hard it is. That's really good. I love it. What about Erica, back to you, a favorite book or piece of music or art that has helped or inspired you?
I might pass on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I might
Hey,
pass on this one.
I should have to take one too. So it'd be just
I was
like
going to
putting it
ask you
in
which
the
one you were going to take.
all right, I will say this. There is a piece of art that I saw, forever ago, when I was on a fellowship living in London, and it was in the National Gallery, Jonathan Turner, and it was a picture of a shipyard with um, one person in it that was working diligently, clearly by themselves, creating an enormous ship. And I remember like my like takeaway on that was that, gosh, you know, this person has to really love his craft. And I think, as it relates to like, the grind of every day and trying to like make progress and move things along, whether starting your own business or like, in developing a career at big companies, which is, can be very difficult. Like finding something where it is your craft and you are just every day trying to get it a little bit better. Is something that I think of from time to time. Okay, so last thing, what makes? All right, so I'll go back to you, Erica. You can't pass on this one. What makes the Koch Scholars Program unique, or how has it brought value to your life?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good one. It's gosh, we always talk about this a lot, but it's actually like exhibited right here. It's the alumni network. Like it is unbelievable to me that I have people that I have known since high school who are in this group with me, and we're all still engaged and supporting each other and there to, help provide advice, whatever it is, or just, get together at a scholar event. That is incredibly unique. Like I don't think there are any other groups like that I am associated with outside of like my own friend groups, right? And so I just love that part of the scholars program and what the team has created. It's incredible. It really is.
I love it. Nathan, would you add anything to that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, it was an opportunity for me to like meet a best friend, like my best friend in college and the person that I spent a year with in public health in India. I met originally as a high schooler at the Coca-Cola Summit, but also just the most random like collisions still and later in life. Like I was on a discussion like this with Coca-Cola not too long ago, and there was another entrepreneur who had founded a company named Meet Cute. And I just ran into her at like a meetup yesterday. And it was funny because we kind of recognize each other from being on Zoom, but not really because we've never seen each other in person. But we're like, hey, I know you. I was like, and that was the first thing she said. She said, you're a Coca Scholar, right? I said, yes, yes. And it's just such a delight.
That's awesome.
And so much about a person, I think, when they're like, I'm a Coke Scholar, like, that they're smart, but not just that they're like wanting to do good work in the world, I think is the way I would best describe it. And so there's just always an immediate connection when somebody's like, you're a Coke Scholar too.
Totally. And I completely agree. Super inspirational group of people that I always get energized talking to, including the two of you. This has been really fun, and I'm really glad that people were able to tune in and listen to what we talked about today. And just thank everyone for listening, and thank you guys for participating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah. Thank you, JJ. This is great.
We hope you enjoyed this second episode of Season 4 of The Sip with entrepreneurs JJ, Erica, and Nathan from the Coke Scholars community. For links to their full bios and other things they discussed, check out our show notes at coca-colascholarsfoundation.org. And if you have an extra minute, we'd love for you to rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe so you'll be the first to receive new episodes. Join us for episode 3 in December, where Coke Scholars Derek Standifer, Santoria Sawyer, and Hope Arcuri Armanis discuss storytelling and dive into how to sell your story. As both a lover of stories and a longtime believer in the power of storytelling, I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. See you next time on The Sip.